Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. I'm not sure if this is pro or not, but I got revenge on a jerk I used to volunteer firefight with. This was in the late 2010s. I decided to join the local fire department as a volunteer firefighter. I did it for about 5 years and it was great. Training consisted of 3 months of fire training, 2 nights a week and all day Saturday, and then you would go to EMT training, another 3 months of training. I was about a year in when I was asked to help train some new recruits. One of the captains, Sarah, was a short, middle-aged woman who was so full of fire she could make a grown man cry. One of those people who commands both fear and respect wherever she went. Honestly, a great captain and great person. When she wasn't being a drill sergeant, she was extremely kind and generous. She would often bake people cakes and treats and deliver them to the various stations in our department. However, in this new academy class that I was asked to help with, there was a cocky kid that we'll call Blake. Blake talked big during the training and acted like he was the all-American hero. Like he was going to be the lead badass in some blockbuster firefighter movie. He performed moderately well in training, but far from the top of the class. He gets assigned to Sarah's station, which is a pretty quiet station in the department. A few months after he starts, Sarah swings by my station one night to say hi. She brings us this massive 6-layer cake from a local bakery. She explained that she had treated her crew to a night out at a fancy steakhouse, which must have cost a lot of money. I think she took out about 8 people and bought a whole cake to top it all off. They had eaten the first 2 layers, so she gave us the remaining 4. "Thanks so much, Sarah," I said, eyeing the cake hungrily. "This looks amazing," she smiled. "You're welcome. You guys deserve it. How's everything going here?" We chatted for a bit before she left, and I couldn't help but think how lucky we were to have her as a captain. Back then, the big social media platform was Instagram, and I decided to look up some of the people in the department to connect with them. I came across Blake's page and noticed some photos of him and the rest of his crew at the steakhouse with Sarah. However, when I read the comments, he bragged about how he had purposefully ordered the most expensive dinner, appetizers, and drinks since Sarah was buying. He bragged about how he was going to take advantage of her stupidity. This alone pissed me off because she was doing something super nice and generous. What an ungrateful, selfish jerk. Then I read the rest of his profile. He had videos and memes on his page glorifying himself as a badass firefighter, bragging about running into burning buildings and how he was such a hero. He was flirting with girls, blatantly trying to impress them with how brave he is. Bear in mind, he just graduated from the academy 3 months prior and hadn't even gone to EMT school. He had never been to a house fire, and all he basically did was carry gear for the other fully qualified firefighters. It was too much for me to tolerate. So here's the revenge. I took screenshots of his Instagram page, including his comments about Sarah and toxic bragging. I made multiple copies and took them to every station in the department. We all had a department-wide messaging app, and I sent out an anonymous message to everyone in the department. I had to keep it brief, but I sent out his Instagram info and told everyone about how he treated Sarah. Within an hour, Blake had cleared out his Instagram page of all posts, photos, etc. A couple of days later, he deleted his account. It's a good thing I made so many screenshots. Immediately after this happened, he stopped coming to volunteer, and a few weeks later I heard that he had quit. I later talked to Sarah and admitted I was the one who sent the message. "I hated how he treated you," I explained. "It wasn't right." Sarah's face fell for a moment. "I appreciate you telling me," she said softly. "I had no idea he felt that way." But being the tough, short lady that she was, she quickly got back into being an actual badass firefighter. She later started dating and married a fire chief that also helped at the academy. I've lost touch with her, but I hope she did well. She seemed pretty happy last time I saw her. The next one is an entitled people story. I never thought I'd be in a situation where I'd have to prove that my own kid was actually mine, but thanks to my nosy neighbor Karen, that's exactly what happened last summer. I'm a single dad with a 7-year-old son, Tyler. We moved into our new house about 6 months ago, hoping for a fresh start after my divorce. The neighborhood seemed nice enough at first. Quiet streets, well-kept lawns, the works. But I quickly learned that appearances can be deceiving, especially when it comes to the lady next door. Karen was in her late 40s with a sleek bobbed haircut and a perpetual scowl on her face. From day one, she made it clear that she didn't approve of me. Maybe it was because I worked from home and didn't fit her idea of what a proper neighbor should be. Or maybe she just didn't like the fact that a single dad had moved in next door. Whatever the reason, she watched me like a hawk, always finding some excuse to criticize how I was raising Tyler. "You really should limit his screen time," she'd say, peering over the fence while Tyler played on his tablet in the backyard. Or, "Don't you think he needs a woman's influence? Children need a mother figure?" I tried to be polite at first, brushing off her comments with a smile and a nod, But as the weeks went by, her interference got more and more irritating. She'd call me out if Tyler was playing outside past 8 p.m., or if I let him eat ice cream before dinner. It was like living next to a judgmental grandmother who thought she knew better than everyone else. The real trouble started when school let out for summer break. I had to work, so I enrolled Tyler in a day camp at the local community center. It was great. He got to swim, play sports, and make new friends. The only downside was that the camp ended at 3 p.m., about 2 hours before I finished work. I came up with a solution that worked for us. Tyler would walk the short distance home from the community center, let himself in with the spare key I'd hidden, and hang out until I was done with work. He knew the rules. Don't answer the door, don't use the stove, just play games or watch TV until I got home. It wasn't ideal, but it was only for a couple of hours, and Tyler was a responsible kid. This arrangement worked fine for a few weeks. Then one day, I got a frantic call from Tyler just as I was wrapping up work. "Dad, there's a police car outside," he whispered, his voice trembling. "They're knocking on the door and saying they need to come in." My heart dropped into my stomach. I told Tyler to stay calm and not open the door. Then I jumped in my car and raced home, my mind spinning with worst-case scenarios. Had there been a break-in? Was there some kind of emergency in the neighborhood? When I pulled up to my house, I saw 2 police cruisers parked out front, and there, standing on my front lawn with a triumphant look on her face, was Karen. I barely had time to get out of my car before she started screeching at the top of her lungs. "That's him, officers! That's the kidnapper!" For a moment, I thought I must have misheard her. Kidnapper? What the hell was she talking about? One of the officers approached me, his hand on his holster. "Sir, we received a report of a possible child abduction at this address. Can you please explain what's going on here?" I was so stunned I could barely form words. "Officer, there's been a huge mistake. I live here with my son. He's inside right now." Karen wasn't having any of it. She marched up to us, wagging her finger in my face. "Don't listen to his lies. I've been watching this house for weeks. That poor little boy is all alone in there, obviously neglected, and this man only shows up in the evenings. He must have kidnapped the child." It was so absurd I almost wanted to laugh, but the gravity of the situation hit me. This wasn't just Karen being nosy anymore. She had called the cops and accused me of a serious crime. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "Officers, I can explain everything. That's my son Tyler in the house. I'm a single father, and he comes home from day camp a couple of hours before I finish work. I have all the documentation to prove he's my son. Birth certificate, custody papers, everything. It's all inside." The officers exchanged glances, clearly trying to assess the situation. One of them asked, "Can we speak to the child?" I nodded, relief washing over me. Surely once they talked to Tyler, this whole misunderstanding would be cleared up. We walked up to the front door and I called out, "Tyler, it's Dad! Can you open the door, buddy? Everything's okay." The door cracked open and Tyler peeked out, his eyes wide with fear. When he saw me, he flung the door open and threw himself into my arms. "Dad! I was so scared!" I hugged him tight, fighting back tears. "It's okay, buddy. Everything's all right now." The officer spoke gently to Tyler, asking him a few questions to confirm that I was indeed his father and that he lived there. Tyler, bless him, answered clearly and calmly, even showing them his room and some family photos. As the truth became clear, Karen's face went from smug to panicked. She started backpedaling, trying to justify her actions. "Well, how was I supposed to know? A child alone all afternoon. It's not right. Someone had to do something." The officers weren't impressed. One of them turned to her with a stern look. "Ma'am, did you have any concrete evidence of wrongdoing before you made this call?" Karen sputtered, her face turning red. "Well, I just knew something wasn't right. Better safe than sorry. Isn't that what they say?" The other officer shook his head. "Ma'am, making false reports to the police is a serious offense. You've wasted valuable police resources and caused unnecessary distress to this family." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Were they actually going to hold her accountable for this mess? The first officer turned to me. "Sir, we apologize for the disturbance. It's clear that there's no issue here. Would you like to press charges against your neighbor for making a false report?" Part of me wanted to say no, to just put this whole nightmare behind us. But then I looked at Tyler, still shaken from the ordeal, and I knew I had to take a stand. "Yes," I said firmly, "I want to press charges." Karen's mouth fell open in shock. "You can't be serious. I was just trying to help." But her protests fell on deaf ears. The officers read her rights and escorted her to one of the cruisers. As they drove away, I saw Karen in the back seat, her face a mixture of anger and disbelief. The aftermath of that day was intense. I had to take time off work to deal with the legal proceedings, but it was worth it. Karen was charged with filing a false police report and harassment. She ended up with a hefty fine and community service, and the judge ordered her to attend counseling sessions. As for us, the whole ordeal actually brought some unexpected positives. The other neighbors, who had been keeping their distance, probably due to Karen's influence, started reaching out. They brought over casseroles, offered to watch Tyler if I ever needed help, and generally made us feel welcome for the first time since we'd moved in. Tyler and I had some long talks about what happened. It shook him up, but I think it also made him realize how much I love him and would do anything to protect him. We're closer than ever now. Karen eventually moved away, unable to face the neighborhood after her actions came to light. Last I heard, she was trying to start fresh in another town. Part of me hopes she learned something from all this, but mostly I'm just glad she's out of our lives. Looking back, I realize how lucky we were that things didn't go worse. It's scary to think how easily an innocent situation can be twisted by someone with bad intentions. But I also learned the importance of standing up for yourself and your family, even when it's hard. These days, life is pretty good. Tyler's thriving in school, I've made some good friends in the neighborhood, and our house finally feels like a real home. Sometimes I look out the window at the house where Karen used to live, now occupied by a friendly retired couple, and I can't help but smile. It's a reminder that sometimes justice does prevail, and that after the storm, there's always a chance for blue skies. The next one is a petty revenge story. So I was getting high on a rooftop. This French guy who's in my room, but I've never really liked his energy, offered to play chess. I said, yeah, sure, but I'm really stoned, so I'll suck. I did indeed suck. There was a group of French people around. My French isn't perfect, but I understood enough to know they were chatting about the game, and he was speaking badly about me. Assuming I didn't understand, I threw the rest of the game. Whilst I tried to put together the sentence I needed in French, I don't have the greatest range of vocab, really, but I can string a sentence together because my father was French Foreign Legion. I haven't spoken 20 years, but I was partially raised in French. I have an excellent accent. He turned to me, maybe next time, cocky and smarmy look on his face. Mais oui, c'est très amusant. La personne de la France pense la personne de la Angleterre ne parle français, mais je parle. Please forgive the spelling, it's been 2 decades, but roughly I believe. But yes, it's very funny. The person of France thinks the person of England not speak French, but I speak. You'd think the fear on his face would have been enough, but when I get back to the room I see his ladder has become detached from our shared bunk. Now it's electrical taped to the wall underneath the bed, completely out of sight due to sliding lockers. First time ever, I won't mind when my upper bunkie is making a nightmare of getting in and out of bed. The next one is a malicious compliance story. So I remembered a story of malicious compliance as recounted to me by a good friend of mine. My friend is a hairdresser by trade and works at a very upscale salon. I go to her myself and can attest to her being amazing. Anyway, this salon had one customer who had been passed around from hairdresser to hairdresser, bullying every single one she saw. This woman was an absolute holy terror. She made 3 separate hairdressers cry. The only reason she was still a client of the salon was that her mom was friends with the owner. She was a relatively young gal, maybe in her mid-20s, with very long bottle blonde hair, past her waist, that she insisted to everyone who wasn't her hairdresser was her natural color. It was very much not. She went to the salon religiously so no one would ever find out her secret shame. She blamed her hairdresser for all her hair problems, many of which were the results of heavy bleaching and how much heat she used on her hair and her refusal to follow care instructions, and was never satisfied with anything. So everything shuts down in our state and she screams at my friend to come do her hair for her because she can't have her boyfriend finding out she's not a natural blonde. Anyway, my friend refuses, and despite Karen's threats, she knows that the salon owner knows she's too damn good at her job and has too loyal a customer base to fire her, so she thinks no more of it until a few months later when the salon reopens. And lo and behold, who should appear in the appointment book but Karen? So the day arrives and Karen shows up with her hair dyed jet black, and not very well dyed either. My friend is shocked because Karen's always made such a big deal about being a blonde and how even though she gets her hair bleached, she really is a natural blonde and just enhancing her color a little. My friend asks Karen what they were doing that day, and Karen demands to be made blonde again. My friend is like, okay, that's gonna be a process, because this idiot has used black box dye, which is really hard to get out. For those of you who don't know, getting dyed dark hair to blonde is usually something done in stages, so the hair has a chance to recover a bit between bleaching sessions to avoid breakage. Karen is like, no, I am going to be blonde when I leave here today, or I am telling your boss that you see clients at home sometimes and getting you fired. My friend sometimes does friends' hair at home for a lower price because she's a sweetheart, which her boss is fine with. And it's your fault I had to dye my own hair this color because my boyfriend would have seen my roots if I hadn't done something. My friend is tired of Karen's BS at this point, but it's a slow day and she has time. She explains to Karen that if she takes her blonde all in one go, her hair will be fried, and she'll likely end up having to lose a lot of length. Karen scoffs and rolls her eyes and is like, "That's never happened before, and my hair's so healthy I'm sure it will be fine if you don't screw it up." Friend recommends at least using Olaplex, a product that helps prevent damage. Karen says she thinks it's a scam to overcharge customers and won't pay for it. Cue malicious compliance. Friend is like, okay, but makes several co-workers be witnesses that this is what Karen is asking for after friend explained the risks. Friend, meanwhile, has formulated a fiendish scheme. After that, friend goes through the whole process of bleaching Karen's hair. She has to do it like 4 times or something, and she checks with Karen after each one that she's absolutely sure she has to be all the way back to champagne blonde by the end of the day, and recommends stopping at some of the nice auburn or strawberry blonde shades in between for now. But Karen insists her boyfriend hates her hair anything but her natural blonde. My friend knows she will refuse because when has a Karen ever decided at the 11th hour to be reasonable? With each bleaching, there's more breakage and Karen's hair feels worse. My friend knows Karen's hair won't survive this, but Karen absolutely refuses to let her stop. Eventually, at long last, my friend manages to get Karen's hair to the required level, and so she starts to rinse Karen's hair. It starts breaking off in her hand, the length of her hair is melted, fried, destroyed. My friend gets the bleach out and immediately conditions the ever-loving duck out of it while explaining to Karen that exactly what my friend said would happen has happened. Karen says she must be exaggerating and insists it's fine. Friend wraps what's left of Karen's hair in a towel and takes her back over to her station, where she shows Karen the problem. Everything past a little beyond chin length is pretty much gone. Karen shrieks and accuses my friend of everything under the sun: incompetence, operating without a license. She most definitely has her license. A personal vendetta, etc., etc. My friend eventually calms her down and tells her she'll do her best to cut it so it looks decent for free. She even has the perfect cut in mind. It'll suit Karen perfectly. My friend gives Karen the sharpest, most beautifully cut angled bob you've ever seen. I've seen it thanks to my friend showing me Karen's Insta. That, despite the incredible precision and skill showcased, is unequivocally and perfectly the Karen. Blown out and styled to, "Can I speak to the manager?" perfection, Karen starts crying because the cut makes her look 40. She wants to speak to the manager. My friend gets the manager and Karen throws a fit, threatening to sue, and how dare they, and how his employee did this to mock her, and so on and so forth, while my friend stands there looking completely innocent. The boss then asks friend her side of the story, and the other hairdressers back her up, and that the cut is just her trying to make the best of what's left of her hair. Even the boss by now is sick of Karen's BS, and Karen is forced to pay the huge sum of money owed for how much time was spent bleaching her hair, much of which is now gone, and leaves swearing never to come back. Her boyfriend, a cop, calls up later and threatens to assault my friend for doing that to Karen's hair against his wishes, and my friend tells him if he tries anything, she's going to tell his superiors and every news agency in the city. Nothing further happens, but he eventually dumps Karen because he doesn't like girls with short hair. The next one is an entitled people's story. 2 years ago, my mom had the first of 2 strokes that left her disabled and eventually led to her death 19 months later. She'd complained of a headache for a few days, and I'd asked about going to the ER, but she said it was getting better. The next morning, she displayed symptoms like she had with a previous stroke: confusion, shuffling gait, etc. Not the usual symptoms, but I knew. Since an ambulance would take her to the worst hospital in the county, I convinced her to get in an Uber with me to go to the doctor's office. Really to the ER, but she would have refused if I said that. By the time we got to the ER, I knew would treat her well. She was having trouble walking, so I grabbed a wheelchair and wheeled her in. I told the front desk her info and that she was having the symptoms of a stroke, then went to sit with her. About 3 minutes later, a nurse came out and took us right back to a room. Apparently there was a lot of grumbling from the others in the full waiting room, which I was too stressed to notice. A friend was coming to meet us and she had to sit in the waiting room for a few minutes. She shared the rest of the story. She arrived about 10 minutes after we were taken back and walked into hearing people complain amongst themselves. Eventually, people were going up to the desk angry, saying it was unfair some of them had waited for hours and my mom had gotten special treatment. I guess some even raised their voice because the nurse who'd gotten my mom heard them from the triage room and stormed out into the waiting room. He outright yelled at everyone about how people are seen in order of who is sickest, and that woman who was taken back right away had a stroke and there was a very limited amount of time to save her life. A few people tried to keep complaining, and he yelled again that anyone unhappy about it could walk right out the door and go to any of the other dozen-plus hospitals in the metro area. He then called a security officer down to make sure no one started any further issues. Moral of the story: if you go to an ER and they mail you wait, be thankful. It likely means you're not going to end up disabled or dead. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.